And welcome back to episode number 51 of Raise the Banner podcast. I'm one of your three co-hosts. As usual, McAtoy here with Zach Brewitt and Benny Ball Game. Dearth, boys, how you doing?
Great. It's the 28-3 episode.
All right.
I'm doing well.
Yeah. Super Bowl 51. Yeah. All right. Let's jump into it. Speaking of the Patriots, they're 1-2. I would say embarrassed is probably the light way to describe Thursday night. They got their ass kicked in every facet of the game. The Jets ran the ball pretty well. They really didn't have too much in their way offensively, and then the Patriots were atrocious offensively. I know we last recorded, I think it was last Wednesday, so it was the day before Thursday Night Football. We've had basically close to a week to digest. How are you feeling about game 3 and the Pats overall right now? I'll start with you, Zach.
Yeah, Jets game was worse than I thought it could have been. I thought there was I didn't think they were going to win, but I thought they would at least show up and have a better game plan than they had. I think when I said there was a chance of them winning, it was only if the Jets had that typical Jets dysfunction. I didn't see any of that. I thought the defensive game plan was exceptionally bad. I mean, there was just countless plays over the middle where there was nobody home. There was no linebacker to spy. There was just pure green grass in front of whoever the wide receiver was, and Aaron Rodgers just picked them apart. I thought Christian Gonzalez was really bad in that game. And then the offensive line as well. We talked about that just really all year, and that was the number one kind of concern going into the game or the season. Sorry. And again, they just got embarrassed. So nothing went well. I truthfully turned it off before Drake May came in, so I didn't really see how he performed. I heard a mixed bag on Twitter, and kind of, as a result of what it was, the reactions I heard were mixed bag. He did fine for what he was given. But yeah, I mean, before the season, I had them going 1-3 to start the season. I have them again losing next week. So, but I thought they would at least put up a fight, and I saw nothing of the sort. So, worse than I thought, honestly. Not good, yeah.
Ben, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, more of the same. They didn't play great. That was as bad as I think things could have gone. Offensive line, not good. More injuries. Couldn't run the ball. Stevenson fumbled for a third game in a row. Wide receivers not getting open. And even if there's some glimmer of hope, the offensive line is not pass protecting well at all. I don't know what the pressure numbers were. It felt like it was 100%. Every time that percent dropped back, it felt like somebody was in his face.
It was 52% or something like that.
Yeah.
If you would say, if you would have me guess, my realistic number would have been higher than that. I mean, obviously you can see the limitations with the offense overall. This is kind of 2 games in a row where the defense has really underwhelmed me. They're not giving up a ton of points. 23 against Seattle, 24 last week. But big picture, not a ton of pressure on the quarterback. A couple of sacks. I forget how many they had against Seattle. I think they had 2 or 3 against the Jets. But it just felt like Aaron Rodgers could have whatever he wanted. Granted, they didn't put up a high number of points. 24 is kind of typically middle of the pack on a year in, year out basis in the NFL. Could have been 27. Probably should have been 27, but Zerline shanked the field goal at the end of the first half. And then, of course, they didn't really need to do much of anything at the end of the game. But I think Rodgers completed 78% of his passes. So again, no resistance really from the pass defense. I don't have the numbers in front of me. It didn't feel like the run defense was atrocious, but they didn't really stop Breece Hall or Braylon Allen either. So another subpar performance from the defense, in my opinion. So, I mean, hopefully that's as bad as it gets. Luckily, they're riddled with injuries because if the 49ers were at full strength, I'd say that we haven't seen how bad it can be, considering they'd be going up against a juggernaut of an offense. But, no McCaffrey, no Debo, Kittle's questionable. They just lost Hargrave for the year. And I think there's somebody else on the defense that's kind of banged up. So still, maybe the 49ers score 20 instead of 40, but not feeling super great. It's kind of hard to find a bright spot in the game. Hopefully they're closer to, the Seattle or the Cincinnati performance overall. At least they were competitive. But 24-3, I don't think is really indicative of the game. It felt like 45-3 to me.
Yeah, I mean, they were out of it from, the opening kickoff. The biggest takeaway from me was, week one, they came out and they played some good football, and you're like, all right, maybe this team can actually be like a middle of the pack team. Week two came around and we saw what was probably the best example of this team, where they just they don't have enough talent. And in the end, like, Seattle's talent just prevailed over New England. And then week three, it's kind of like it's literally just been one good game, one average mediocre game, and one awful game so far. They were outplayed in every facet. They were outcoached. I don't want to necessarily I saw someone basically, it was like this was the worst coached game I've seen of the Patriots since like pre-Belichick. I was like, that seems very dramatic of a statement to say. But I think offensively, they went in with a game plan that was the wrong game plan. They obviously made a more of an effort to get Douglas and the wide receivers involved, but in essence, they pushed away from the run, and by the time that they could even try to get back into that run first offense, they were down by 10, 14 points. And at that point, you're stuck playing catch up, and obviously it's tough to run the ball at that point. So it's a frustrating game. The one takeaway I took from that game overall is that I think we're going to see Drake May pretty soon. Ben, we talked about this the other day, and I don't know, maybe over the last day or two, it's kind of I've shifted the other way, but I think that if they can get Sau back and he can solidify the left guard spot, and they can just be serviceable on the O-line, I think there's a real possibility that we see Drake May next week. And by next week, excuse me, I mean week 5. He's not. I would be very surprised if he starts against San Francisco, but I just think that there are a lot of pressures on Mayo now, and as much as we didn't expect them to be much, they're going to be they're going to be 1-3 probably, heading back home against a Miami team that will be without Tua. I think it's a pretty good spot to just kind of let him loose. Where are you guys on that part?
It feels like a decent spot. I think, and this really depends on how much you want to give credence to what Mayo says versus how he acts. But he basically, in the way that Mayo can, given the circumstances, gave Brissett as much of a ringing endorsement as you can give at this point in the season by saying that, he showed toughness and grit and battled and, which is, a soft way of saying that things don't look good, but he didn't give up. I just don't really know what to expect. I think, you had mentioned to me the other day, you messaged me and said that you thought that if the offensive line was in a better spot, that Drake May would probably be starting. I've kind of revisited that idea, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it. Mayo said from the beginning of the whole process, well, not the beginning of the whole process. He said towards the end of preseason that the O-line play had no impact on his decision for who would play quarterback. So if you take that at face value, which I find it really hard to believe that you can take that statement at face value.
Of course he's lying to you.
If you take it at face value, then I don't know how you could feel confident that Drake May would start anytime soon.
The problem is that the O-line's not going to get much better. And so I just think that the circumstances will have a little bit changed enough. And maybe they
Right.
do feel like May is a touch further along than what he was, a month ago. And it's time to kind of just like let him loose. Because you got to also remember that that Sal was out or already out going into when they made that decision to go with Brissett. They had no idea what to expect from the O line. At least they have a better idea. City Sal seems like he's going to be back this week. He's expected, I think, to practice tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. I think, like I said to you, I think that if the Patriots had a top 10 O line right now, I think May would have very possibly started week 1. Because the O line sucks, they've been hesitant. But if they feel like the O line can just be serviceable, I think that they should and they will soon just kind of say, okay, it's time to go. And partly because May is just flat out better than Jacoby Brissett. Nothing against Jacoby. I love the guy, but he's not very good.
No.
I was gonna say, I think for me, I was always a proponent of wait until you have to, put Drake May in, whatever that means, whether Jacoby Brissett gets hurt or it just got so bad that they had to put him in or whatever. I think I also expected Brissett of the offense to look a little bit better than it has. I mean, it's just been abysmal. I don't expect it to be like the Tom
honestly, it's
Brady.
been kind of exactly what. I mean, the last Thursday night was bad, but overall, It's been kind of what I expected, where they were just going to be like a serviceable. Maybe they could, the first 2 games they could put up like 20 points a game, like 16.
And that's fair. Maybe
I'm
have recency bias because of how bad the Jets game was, but we know Kraft always gets, he's very conscious of the public opinion. He's very in tune, for better or worse, of what people are saying. We know that he's always going to be the one to push, the shiny new toy, and that's Drake May. So I think it's going to be a lot sooner than I expected. At least I could definitely see it being week 5, especially if Tua's out. Kind of give it a softer opponent. That team doesn't look anything like it did week 1 without Tua. Skylar Thompson just isn't good. And I think we talked about it last week. There is a easier stretch of games. I think it starts in week 8 through week 13 or until the bye week in 14. That it gets a lot
really
easier
over
for
the
them.
next after this game, they have a couple tough matchups, but the overall schedule isn't very difficult. You got Houston, who's good. Obviously, they're good, but part of what makes them very good is their offense. Their defense is solid. It's definitely not bad, but it's not something that is a daunting defense to face. And then they face the Jets again, but I mean, we went over their schedule. What in between that, who they got? They got the Rams, Colts, Dolphins, Bears, Jaguars. None of these teams scream to you oh crap, Tennessee, so is Houston the most ideal spot for him to be playing very early? No, but I think they gotta stop babying him enough to where we got to remember he played in a situation in UNC where he was the far superior talent.
Yeah.
It's not like this is it's not like we compared it to Mac. Mac came from Bama where everything was perfect. Mm-hmm. So it was a little different if you were throwing him into the fire. I think May is much more able and willing to kind of withstand that.
He's more conducive to an offense, a line that sucks. I think Brissett is, he's not immobile like we've seen in the past. He's not a mobile quarterback.
The slowest black quarterback in the NFL.
Exactly. But I think May can at least use his legs a bit more in escape pressure or just make a play in the way that Jacoby Brissett can't. So I agree. I think we'll see him a lot sooner than I expected for sure. And I agree. I think throwing him into, stop babying him. You just got to throw him in, let him kind of figure out the kinks. I mean, we're seeing it with Jaden Daniels played very well last night. Or was it last night? Yeah, last night. Granted, the line looks much better than our line does, but if you give him time to just understand and see game speed. At some point, he's going to have to figure it out, and I think it takes more than just a week, and it's like the perfect setting to bring him in. So you throw him in. I agree after the Niners game, and just let it ride, but then you can't take him out. So
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is what is going to be the difference week 5 to week 10? Like,
I don't think there is one.
exactly. So, like, is what Drake May is going to learn between week 5 and week 10, let's just say, just for a number,
Yeah.
going to be really worth him not playing? I disagreed. I thought maybe he should have started week 1, but like I kind of get the first 4 games where they were facing Cincy, who, despite the fact that they're 0-3, we thought it was going to be a tough game. We knew the Jets was going to be a tough game. They have a great defensive line. We knew San Francisco, obviously we couldn't predict all the injuries that they're going to have, but we knew San Francisco was a very good football team. We knew Seattle, for as much as they weren't like a phenomenal team, that they're not going to be like an easy game whatsoever either. But like now we're through the first month. He's got that extra month of practice. The guy's out there throwing like 6 days a week, working with teammates, trying to improve. A lot you could improve on a lot over a month. Like, I think it's time to let him rip and get him out there. Basically tentatively plan now that we'll give Brissett this one more game, and then it's time to roll with May, and just kind of see where it goes. And like you said, you really can't pull him. So you just got to be able to get ready and prepare for what could be a bumpy road over the next final 11 weeks or 13 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and it's going to be bumpy no matter what. But
yeah, and I think that's you proposed the question and maybe you inadvertently answered it. I think that's the difference between week 5 and week 10 is at what point are the Patriots comfortable with the prognosis for the remainder of the season and saying, okay, if we're making this change, we're not backing out on it. So what is best for Drake May's outlook moving forward? Is it, it's been a month, so the season is his, or is it not? Are we not comfortable riding it out for the remainder of the season with him for the last, 13 games? Is 13 games too long? I don't know. But I think that's the answer, is what comfortability does the organization have with handing the reins over and saying, Brissett, you need to be the mentor. You need to be, Drake May needs to be a sponge. He's going to learn from you, but it's on the job training from now on. And, it really depends on their comfortability. I keep going back to the Elliott Wolf philosophy is I don't think he plans on rushing it. Granted, he's had unique situations before where he was going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. So there was no pressing need to rush the quarterback. I still think he plays it a little conservative, but it's all going to boil down to the team and the organization's comfortability with, at what point do we let him go and just deal with what happens the rest of the season. I still think that there's a little bit of PTSD with, not just Mac Jones, but you look at, Caleb Williams has not had a sterling start to his season. You look at Bo Nix. He was decent this past week, but not a sterling start to his season by any stretch of the imagination. Who's the other guy? Yeah, Jaden Daniels has flashed a little bit. So
this is expected, though. Like, that's expected for these young guys.
But I think that when you look at the track record of the success rate of starting rookie quarterbacks early versus not, and the success rate is staggeringly low for the guys who start right away and don't sit and develop and learn on the bench behind a veteran. And I mean, again, believe what you want, but the numbers are the numbers. It's staggeringly low, the hit rate on quarterbacks. So I think
what's the hit rate for quarterbacks that sit? Can't be much. It's not much higher.
I mean, in recent memory, Lamar Jackson sat, MVP, Patrick Mahomes, 3-time Super Bowl winner. He sat for a year. I mean, Justin Herbert was going to sit. He kind of got thrown in the line of fire because Tyrod Taylor got injured like second or third game of the year that year.
Did Tua sit?
No, Tua started right away.
Who are they sitting behind, too, is my question. Because, like, you look at
Obviously, that's
everyone's
the thing.
stats.
Like,
Like Mahomes sat
Mahomes is
behind
Alex Smith. Brady
Alex
is
Smith.
Bledsoe.
Yeah.
Lamar
So
is Joe Flacco. Like, people who have won
correct.
and been pretty good in the
Right.
league, too, you know?
Yeah, like obviously far better situations for the guy that was there. But I think that, and like most things, I think that the answer falls somewhere in between what teams like Green Bay and Baltimore and Kansas City found themselves in, where if you're the Bears and you go from one first-round quarterback to the next, and you don't see drastic change because of how you're managing your team. I think it falls somewhere in the middle, and Drake May should probably start earlier than week 14, which was my early preseason prediction. But it's all going to come down to how comfortable are they with saying, okay, like the season's yours, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. I think that's the answer. And yes, there is a soft spot coming up after week 4, so logically it makes sense because you don't face a legitimate defense until, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, the Jets week 5, but it's at home, fine, but not week 5.
week 8.
Week 8. And then after that, the 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. The Bills week 15 and 17.
Yeah, again, I think the biggest thing for me and what the decision really should come down to at this point is, Mayo needs to decide. Let's say they go into San Francisco. They don't get embarrassed, but they just get beat. 27-10 or something like that. He needs to sit there and decide and say, what is going to improve for Drake May between now and, let's say, week 9, week 10, maybe week 11.
But I don't know if that's the answer. I think it's the organization. I think the organization knows that it's a marginal change, if anything. It'll come down to their comfortability with just handing him the reins and saying the rest of the season's yours.
Yeah, their answer is always, we're gonna go, and when he's ready, we're gonna go.
But they're afraid to do Mac Jones again, like a Mac Jones 2.0, and he can't do that.
Yeah, but
just
I don't even get the Mac Jones thing because he performed pretty well as a rookie. Like I really don't. The Mac Jones comparison doesn't make a lot of sense to me because he was successful as a rookie. He had a pretty good rookie season, and I don't know, that comparison drives me nuts because it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But again,
I agree, it's not making sense. I think it's less. It's not me saying that. I think that's what.
No, I know.
The team actually does. Feel that way, that they don't want to do another 3 years of what we just did with Mac Jones and Bill Belichick and all the changing of the coordinators and the just benching them, restarting them. It's like you can't do that again. So they're trying to be overly cautious, which is still stupid.
No one's going to be knocking down the door for Alex Van Pelt to be a head coach this year. So they won't. I don't think they'll have to worry about a coordinator change unless they are the ones that want the change.
Exactly.
But no, I really do think that that's how they need to approach it and say, like, what benefit does Drake May get from sitting another month versus what benefit does Drake May get from playing? And then obviously the risks. The risks is borderline like nothing for not playing him, obviously. Like it's not going to make him worse. Playing him, theoretically, there's negatives. I don't know, but like
I think the risk is incredibly high playing him. But incredibly high. It's a very high risk reward if you play him. Incredibly high.
What's the difference of the risk if you play him week 5 versus week 10?
5 more weeks of figuring out the offensive line.
The O-line's not going to be
the O-line's the O-line, though.
The O-line's not going to be magically better week 10.
I mean, Caden Wallace won't stop holding in 5 weeks. Like, it's just who he is.
But I'm trying to think of what is the organization saying? Not what am I saying as a fan?
No, I get it to an extent, but that's what they need to think of is like we're obviously fans and stuff like that, but like they have to be inside the locker room and just on the practice field and deciding like, is our O-line going to magically get better over the next month? Like to the point where it's like a marginal noticeable difference The answer is like no. The goal is that the O-line can just be serviceable. And if the O-line's serviceable, then like maybe it's a little bit of a better situation if they could figure it out by week 10.
I would argue that going from where they're at to serviceable is a drastic improvement. No?
I mean, theoretically, but what are the odds that they get there?
But the thing is if your hope is serviceable, you could make an argument, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. Maybe I know we have I can check with Pro Football Focus. I'd be pretty surprised if the Pats offensive line doesn't rank as the worst offensive line in football.
It's probably bottom 3 or bottom 5 at the very least.
It's easily bottom 5, and it's probably the worst. So to go from the worst to serviceable, in my view, coming from wildly off base, serviceable to me is average. If they to go from bottom of the league to, somewhere between.
See, I don't say serviceable is average. I think average is average. I think serviceable is like just not atrocious. So like maybe like 22 to 24 range, where they're just not getting their ass handed to game in and game out, but they're flat out just still not really a good O-line.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe they can't. I mean, if that's the benchmark, then maybe, because I guess he did. It's weird. I guess he did practice. He was at left tackle for the media portion of practice yesterday.
Sal?
Yeah.
I didn't. Wow, I didn't see that. That would be.
I checked Mike Reese's Twitter from yesterday, and he was in the left tackle spot for the media portion of practice because Michael Jordan was injured, and that today was an off day. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Wait. He was in the left tackle or left guard?
Hold on, I'll go back and look. I'm pretty sure it said left.
You said Jordan. Jordan's the left guard. That's why you caught me off guard as saying Sal was at left tackle, which I think he started as tackle last year.
Oh, sorry, guard. You are correct. Okay. Guard. My mistake.
Okay.
Caden Wallace has been left tackle. City Sal has been guard. Sorry,
Okay.
Mixed. So, and I guess the assumption is that Caden Wallace is going to get all the opportunity to be the starting left tackle this upcoming week. Because I'm trying to think, who was it? Vidarian Lowe is still hurt. So, but in any case, so City So was back. But I think that if the goal is to become serviceable, that's not a huge jump if you're going to get City So back. And obviously there's going to be growing pains with Caden Wallace. Zach hit the nail on the head. The holding issues. I thought the couple of those were a little egregious, but we don't have to go that route. But I think that, that's, if they feel that the offensive line can go from really bad to serviceable / below average in 5 weeks, then that's the difference between Drake May starting against the Dolphins and then starting, I don't know what they have week 10.
Perhaps. My thing is just they have to be realistic with what are the odds of that happening. And so not that is May's future going to be drastically different if he starts week 10 versus week 5? Probably not. But
no,
I don't want May sitting on his ass on the sideline because you're hoping in 4 or 5 weeks the O-line is like a little bit better. That's my thing.
Yeah, but the alternative though is if the O-line continues to be horrendously bad, then all you're doing is setting him up for failure because he's going to be constantly under duress. So it's like,
so you're going to not play him at all?
If the answer is constant under duress or clean on the sideline, I'll take clean on the sideline 100 times out of 100.
That's my thing though. Like I think that they're planning to play him.
Well, yeah, they are eventually,
but it's just a matter of when.
Right.
So I think even if the O-line sucks, that they're probably going to play him at the latest, week 14 at the very latest.
Yeah, if the offensive line continues to be bad for another 4 to 6 weeks, then I think at that point they go, okay, we're halfway through the season, and even with health and, a half a season's worth of coaching, we're not making noticeable improvement. So what's the point of just having him sit there? Then the conversation becomes, are we setting him up for injury risk and potential failure? Or
that's the thing. That conversation should start now. If you're not comfortable with the idea,
they're not having that conversation though.
Yes, but so if they're not like if in their mind they're saying, let's say 6 weeks from now it's week 9, week 10, and they're like the O line still sucks. Now we have to decide if it's worth putting them out there. Like if you're making those decisions, then like make them now. If you're gonna be willing to put them out there week 10 with a bad O line, put them out there week 5 with the bad O line.
You see, I disagree. Because if you're putting him out there week 5, you're subjecting him to 12 weeks of poor offensive line play, not 7.
I'd rather him get the experience. The experience could still be there and beneficial just as much as the risk of, I guess, maybe an extra 5 weeks of possible injury. Theoretically,
I just think with awful offensive line play, the risk is too high.
So then you're gonna probably, like, by that measurement, you're gonna have to sit him the entire year. Tell Amy I said hi.
We talked about it too. Like Drake May came from chaos. I don't know where do you go? NC State is that where Jacoby Brissett went?
Yeah.
But like he came from chaos, so he's much more used to like bad line play or being under duress or being constantly pressured. And I just looked it up. PFF does have the Pats ranked dead last in O line play. The next 5 are the Saints, Tennessee Titans, Seahawks, Giants, and Commanders. And we just talked about how good Jaden Daniels looked like 2 weeks ago. Or sorry, last night. And like he started out being really kind of sketchy. Didn't really know how he was going to perform. Week 2, he was a little better, and then week 3 looked really good. So that squad is only ranked 5 spots ahead of the Patriots. So to your point, if they can get even marginally better, throw Drake May in there, he's going to look better. He's going to make this team look better, this offensive unit look better, just by having him out there versus Jacoby Brissett, who can't run around and who can't extend plays. So I'm with you. I think starting him sooner. Well, I guess the goal, if the goal is to salvage the season, then I would say bring him in if you think he can make the offense look better. If the goal is to preserve him until he's ready or until the O-line looks better, then I would think wait. But I think it would be, just I don't see a difference between week 5 and week 10, for example.
Yeah, that's going to be the question that they have to decide. Is they're going to say, do we think the O-line can become serviceable? I think that the odds that they improve to that point are, I don't know, 50-50 at best. And that's probably being pretty generous. And so at that point, they need to decide, like, I think games as a rookie are important for a rookie QB. Like, experience matters. And so getting May out there as soon as he's kind of ready and able is important for part of his development. And so if they don't, unless they feel strongly that the O-line is going to magically get better over the next month, like they should be looking to start him in what will be a pretty good stretch if you want to, start a rookie quarterback and throw him in the fire. But are you like out on starting him anytime soon?
No, not completely. I think to your point, and I mean, it's a pro football organization. I'd like to think that they're having these conversations and that the assumption is that, they're not going to roll out of bed week 10 and go, okay, well, the offensive line still sucks. Now what? I think that they're intelligent enough to have the foresight to say, where do we see ourselves in 4 to 6 weeks and what's the best decision moving forward? I think that in terms of your matchups, I think that if you start in week 5, you're giving him a soft landing spot, so to speak. Not a murderer's row of defenses. I think 3 of the 5 or 4 of the 5 games after this week. They have 4 consecutive. Well, 4. The third game of that 4-game stretch is in London, so it's a de facto game. But 3 out of those 4 games, 3 out of the next 4 after the 49ers are true home games. And the 4th one is where you really don't see a defense that scares you. So am I out on it? No. But for me, I would err on the side of caution and say, I'd be semi-comfortable, only because I just think the risk is still high in the near future, given the status of the offensive line. But I'm not out wholeheartedly. I'd welcome a change. I would just be, cautious with how things are going to look 6 weeks from now, if they decide to turn the reins over.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, if they hold them out, I'm not gonna it's gonna be similar to what we talked about before the season, where I don't think it's gonna be some oh my god, you're making a colossal mistake by not starting them. Blah blah blah. Blah. It's not gonna be that. It's just gonna be what are we waiting for exactly? And I just don't really see the difference for May in terms of developing that is going to make that big of a difference at this point. Even just in the brief of what we saw on Thursday night, I think he's capable of doing it. He's got good presence in the pocket. The people were putting up photos of when he got kind of drilled when he tried to scramble, and it was this is why you don't start. Well, it was it wasn't even inside the pocket. He tried to step through and run for it, and the guy came out from the side and kind of decked him. That's going to happen no matter the O-line. So I don't want to see that as an excuse. But
yeah,
it really comes down to we're starting to get to the question of what are we waiting for? And I don't think that development is going to over the next month is going to be that much different. Really, I could kind of have understood the first month, but the next month, what is he going to really improve on over the next month that is so monumentally different than what he is right now? And I know you could kind of make that argument for the same thing, but at least he got his feet wet, obviously week 3, and he's seen now 4 live games of, from the sideline, obviously, but he'll have 4 weeks of game film to break down and try to improve on that aspect. And then obviously a month worth of practicing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the O-line is the O-line. If your goal is to win games and develop him as quickly as possible, then throw him in, let him learn, on the fly.
Yeah, unless they're going to trade for some offensive lineman that's going to make them notably better. I'm kind of ready for that show. I don't think I would start him week 4. I'll say that.
I agree with that.
Going across country, San Francisco, let Jacoby take that beating, I guess, from the Jets, the San Francisco D-line and stuff like that. But
this whole conversation has really made me realize how much of a silent hero Scarnecchia was. He just could turn.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Scarnecchia. I don't think the O-line would be was better under Scarnecchia here right now.
No, but it wouldn't be top 5 or top 10. But I mean, he left and he was here in 2014, and then he retired or something like that, didn't he?
Yeah,
in 2015, and the team was so bad, and they brought him back, and it was back to serviceable, if not really good. So he had some sort of secret sauce to make
he elevates
very similar O-line good.
He elevates people, but in the end, talent is talent. They just don't
Trent
have
Brown
was
an all-pro, and Trent Brown sucks. He's out. I know he's hurt now for the rest of the year, but he made the 2018 team was nothing great, and he made that team look like the old Cowboys of the 2010s.
Yeah, Scar retired after 2013 and came back 3 years later because they couldn't find anybody to.
I thought he was only gone for 1 year. I didn't realize it was 3.
Yeah, they
had to fire what's his face. I forget what his name was. It was something with a B maybe. Because he sucks so bad, they fired him mid-season.
That was 2015, I think, right?
Yeah, 2015.
It was the big bald guy. Remember that?
Yeah, it's not Dayball, but I think of Dayball when it happens. But I know it's not him. I forget where he is.
I thought he won the Super Bowl with us in 2014, retired, and then whoever this guy, not Dayball, is, came in, and then 2016 they brought Scar back.
No, so they had Dave. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of his last name. DeGuglielmo,
Yeah.
Was the offensive line coach for the Seahawks Super Bowl, and then he didn't last. And then they had who was the guy they had when Bill O'Brien was here?
Last year.
Yeah, the guy from was it the guy from Oregon, or is that this year?
Oh,
Yeah, no, that was the guy from Oregon.
Adrian Clem.
Adrian Clem.
Yeah, he obviously he got sick or something and left, and
Yeah. But they had I forget. I don't know why I brought that up, but they had I forget who they had after Dave, and then Scar unretired, and was here for 4 more years because he was on the Super Bowl 51 and 53 teams. He retired after Super Bowl 53.
Yep,
that makes sense.
And said he would not come back.
All right, let's transition to a little bit of Red Sox. I know we talked about before we went live that they're 3.5 games out. They have I think 5 more games to go.
Yes,
they would need a miracle to fill a playoff spot. Technically, they're still alive, but they would need a miracle. They've won their last 3, so at least they're kind of playing some decent ball. But
they're the Titanic trying to lock up all the doors and pray.
Yeah. That's kind of the best way to put it. But my question here is, I'll kind of make it a little simple yet complex at the same time. Was the season a failure? Yes or no? Or your explanation?
So overall, yes. Like in a basic sense, and here's why I'll elaborate. Given that they're the Boston Red Sox and they have the resources and they have the fan base and they have the market to be a perennial contender, I think that anytime you don't make the playoffs, that's a failure. Having said that, how they're conducting business is a different story altogether. They're trying to bring these young guys along. That's been evidently clear for the last 2.5 years, if not more. So I think, given how they're going about it, the answer would be no. I think that their plan is to be a team that treads water. They hover around 500, and hopefully they can knock on the door of one of these wild card spots. They are not overextending themselves because they know that well, at least we hope as a fan base that they're going to overextend when these hopefully 4 guys come up in the near future. But I think in a broad sense, it's unfortunate that this is how they decided to do things, and that in general, not making the playoffs in Boston is a failure. But when you factor in how they're trying to conduct business, I don't think that the team measures successes and failures in the win-loss column yet. But it's not that makes it any easier from a fan base perspective. It's still the most expensive ballpark to go to. They charge $18 for beer and a premium price for a lot of their seats. So I think, from a fan perspective, it's a failure. But, I think we look back on at least more recently, we look back on some of these years as, tolerable if these prospects come up, hit, and then we build around them and become that contender again.
Fair enough. Ben, Zach, how about you?
Yes, the season has been a failure. Anytime, as Ben said, you, as a big market team, one of the biggest in baseball, you miss the playoffs and are at risk of going under 500. It is a failure. I get it. You can easily bring up people and bring up your prospects, in a way that you're kind of bringing them up easily and not throwing them into the fire. But you still have to spend, still have to be in the mix for top free agents or top trade targets, and not have a spending cap or a limit on what you're going to spend on players. For whatever reason, John Henry and organization have made that abundantly clear that they don't want to spend. As a fan for the last 25 some odd years, watching them be in every single trade talk or be linked to every big free agent or big trade acquisition, for them just to turn the other cheek and not even have interest in someone like a Juan Soto, for example. I know he's not a fit here now, but as an example, it is a failure when you go under 500 or potentially under 500 for 4 of the last 5 years. Missed the playoffs 4 of the last 5 years, 5 of the last 6 years if you go back to 2019. Yes, and I know that what they're trying to do is bring it up, but as Ben said, you're still the most expensive ballpark to go to. People aren't coming as fans; they're coming to these marketing events, basically with the baseball game going on. Yes, it's a failure as a season.
Yeah, they didn't improve from last year. Like they're in the borderline exact same spot. They did it in a little different way, but they didn't really improve from last year. So I don't think that there's really any justification to call this anything other than a failure of a season. You guys kind of touched on a little bit of it, different aspects of what would make it that way. We talked about before the season where they said, Henry said, "Oh, we're waiting for these guys to be ready." And I remember screaming to Ben in anger that, like, why are you waiting? If you're so confident that these guys are going to be good, you can spend now knowing you're not going to have to pay because these guys are good. You're going to have young, cheap replacements. And so I know we don't have to dive super deep into like what we expect this offseason, but like, yeah, it was another failure. And I hope John Henry finally kind of sees the direction of this team and says, this team is ready to compete. Because while they're going to be hovering around 80 wins, I think they're at 79 right now, they're not far off. They're really not far off considering what's coming through the pipeline. So, if they can add a top one or two top pitchers, like, I mean, just put an example, and I know he's going to win the Cy Young, but like, what would this Red Sox record be with Chris Sale on the team? I mean, they're probably a
Pro-
playoff team.
Probably. I mean, where they're what, one game over 500?
I think, yeah, I think they'll probably be
I would
like
say
where
they're
the Royals are
yeah,
right
I'd,
now.
I'd say Royals or Twins. You're probably 6 to 7 games over 500, and you're solidly in that wild card conversation.
Yeah, so you're all of a sudden like, that's the difference between them being seen as a failure of the season versus them having, again, like, anytime you don't win a World Series, it's obviously like it's tough to call it a success of the season, but like if they had 86 wins and lost in the first round of the wild card, we would be looking at this team pretty differently than what we do right now. So while it wouldn't be a necessarily successful season, they clearly, it would be a whole different vibe of how we're feeling right now. So the writing's on the wall for how things are going to play out for them. But yeah, I mean, I can't say it's anything other than a failure for this year. And I just hope John Henry is kind of woken up and seeing that like they're ready. Like this team is ready to kind of take that next step. And unfortunately, like they need to spend on pitching because it's positional prospects. But whether that's spending or trading for them, one way or another, they kind of have to go. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I did want to also come back to the whole Tristan Casas conversation. I know we discussed last week. He obviously kind of went off the other night, hit three dingers like the day after the episode or whatever, something like that.
He heard us talking. Somebody played some clips, and they're like, "Hey, Tristan, raise the banner is lighting a fire."
Yeah. I kind of put up a poll, and I know I did the which would you rather, and it came back between Abreu, Duran, and Casas. Abreu took over slightly over 50% of the votes, and among Campbell, Mayer, and Teal, Mayer took the majority of the votes, around like 50% as well.
That doesn't surprise me.
No.
So I think I know I asked you this question about who would you rather deal between Casas and Mayer?
I mean, I think Casas gets you more, and I think on a couple fronts, I think it's easier to replace Casas at first, because you theoretically could either go pay somebody in the offseason or you sign a third baseman and you move Devers across the diamond. You already have Story at short. And I think that theoretically, I think Campbell's a bit big to play short, but certainly has played it before. And I think that with Mayer's injury, I don't want to say concern, but he's been shut down at the end of the year for 2 years in a row now, 3 years in a row. So 2 or 3, whatever it is.
So at least 2, it might be 3.
So, and one of them was a shoulder. I forget what it was the other time.
Back, I think.
So, if this is happening at least twice, so it becomes a question of, are they just cautious with him? Because again, it's been towards the end of the year where he's been shut down. It's not like
the answer to that is yes. They've been overly the Sox, and every time you're in the minors, really, teams are very, very cautious with prospects.
Yeah,
because there's obviously not a ton of reason to be not aggressive, but risky with injuries.
Yeah, so I think with a little bit of a shroud of uncertainty over his health, not that Casas has been the beacon of health either, but I think that people have seen what Casas can do when healthy, and so I think that just becomes more attractive to teams that are willing to take a risk on a guy who's done it at the major league level, and that keeping him healthy is the primary roadblock to a really, really good season. Whereas I think there's still question marks around Mayer that you're basically just betting on potential. Whereas Casas has actual tangible proof that he can do it.
Yeah.
Would I move Casas over Mayer? I'd really have to think about it. Only because Story's not going anywhere. So realistically, the only way that Mayer plays over him is if Story gets hurt again. Some decent risk with that happening, but that's really what you're banking on, is if Mayer's ready to go, he's only playing, well, I shouldn't say only, theoretically he could play a different position, but he's only going to play short if Trevor Story can't, or they decide to move him because second base is less physically demanding. There's more, there's a little bit of a block there with Mayer.
Yeah, Zach, how about you? Which would you rather?
Yeah, I think for me, I would have last year, beginning of this year, even probably until Mayer, or until we talked about moving Casas, I would have said Mayer, just because there's been so many red flags around him. Even from the time of him getting drafted, when he slipped to 4, everyone wondered why he slipped to number 4 when he was the consensus number 1 overall pick, for a lot of teams, a lot of fans. Then he got hurt. Then he really struggled in Portland, or maybe he flipped those. He struggled in Portland, and then they shut him down. And then he got hurt again after having a pretty good year. So I was kind of done with him. I figured, get what you can for him, or he would get you get you the most back from your big 3. But then Casas, came in, and I agree. I think he would get you the most return, but I'm gonna go opposite of you, Ben. I think it's easier to replace Mayer just because we have so many infield prospects, or even players. I know Stories and a prospect, obviously. So it's easy to replace him. We've had a gap at first base for, after Mitch Moreland, it was 5 years, and then we finally got Casas, and now we're going to trade him away again. So I'd have a hard time getting rid of that, even if it did get you maybe a bit more in return. So I'm still Mayer in my trading, between those two, unless you're getting just a top of the line number 1 stud pitcher in return with control. I know it's what they care about. So I'm still Mayer, but would listen to obviously Casas opportunities.
Yeah, and people kind of were commenting on when we posted it online, thinking it was me kind of saying I want to trade Casas. I'm not banging my fist on the table saying hey, we should and need to trade Tristan Casas. No, that's not what I'm saying.
No.
The answer is, if Seattle came to me and said, "Hey, we'll put Logan Gilbert, we'll put George Kirby, we'll put uh, Bryce Miller on the table. You
You
need
can
to
add
put
Brian.
Tristan.
You can add Brian Wu to that list.
Yeah, we're gonna put those guys on the table. You have to put Costas on the table." I'm not sitting there and responding with, "No, that's not an option." Like that. That's what I'm telling you. Like
Yeah.
it's. Do I want to actively trade him? No. If the right deal comes along, he's not untouchable. Like that, and that's a big difference between like obviously saying you want to actively trade someone versus being okay and willing if the deal comes along. So if Seattle comes and says Casas as the main piece, and whether they did it straight up or you had to add something smaller on the end to get me Logan Gilbert, yeah, I think I'm doing it. Like I would trade Tristan Casas for Logan Gilbert.
Okay.
So
Would you trade him for Luis Castillo?
no.
Because
I wouldn't
here's the
trade him for them.
because the reality is this: the Seattle Mariners are not going to trade Logan Gilbert for Tristan Casas. They're not going to do it. Now
I
we
would
can
give
now we can have that conversation. We don't have to dive down that rabbit hole. But Seattle's made it abundantly clear historically that they're not moving any of their young arms,
no.
even if it means trading, even if it means acquiring for a young arm somebody like a Casas. I think, unless they really get desperate, I think that the conversation circles around Seattle trying to figure out a way to trade Luis Castillo for something versus trying to, uh, you know, being willing to move a Gilbert, a Bryce Miller, a Kirby. I don't think as if they would come to you and say, we want Costas, we're willing to give up these pieces. We don't have to really dive down the rabbit hole, but I just don't really foresee a situation where Seattle's willing to trade one of the younger guys for a guy like Costas when they'd be more apt to want to trade Castillo, who's costing them just under $22 million a year, for quote unquote a lesser return.
Yeah, but
But
you
yeah,
could get Castillo for less than Casas, though, no? If he's
correct.
making that
I would,
much and he's
yeah,
not
yeah.
best, he's the third or fourth best pitcher on that team.
Um,
I don't know if
maybe
he's
I think
better or worse than Kirby, but
so I think if they were to call and say, we're interested in listening to what you would give us for one of those young arms. I think that the conversation is it's Casas plus more, right? Like, I think that it would be, I think Seattle would want one of the top prospects plus Casas if they're moving a Kirby or a Gilbert. And rightfully they should want that. They should want Casas and Marcelo Mayer or Casas and Kyle Teal. They should be asking for that because that's the quality of pitcher and the control that you have with a guy like Logan Gilbert. You have to get something in return. I think if the conversation is, we're looking for offense but we're not moving a young arm, but we are willing to move a guy like Castillo, like what's the conversation? That's when I think you're talking about something like a Jaron Duran or a Weiler Abreu. And, I don't, maybe Duran does it 1-for-1. I don't think Abreu does it. Maybe it's Abreu and a second tier prospect, or a third tier prospect, I think, just because obviously Castillo's 31 or 32, and expensive, as we just mentioned. I know he's in his early 30s. But I think that when it comes to listening to offers, and Matt and I have talked about this before, it's not a willingness to move a guy. Like, you're not actively shopping Casas, but you're not exactly hanging up the phone if and when somebody calls and says, "What's the price?" Whether it's a Seattle or somebody else, right? Somebody who needs offense and has an abundance of pitching that they're at least willing to have a conversation about.
We've said it before. There's too many holes on this team to have. I mean, outside of maybe Robin Anthony, too many holes on this team to have untouchable people.
Yeah,
And I
and
think
Campbell,
there's a
and I think Campbell's
couple
pretty
maybe, but
close to that
yeah.
untouchable range.
Okay.
But I think that, everyone has a price. However, I'm not moving Roman Anthony unless it's for like a young, controllable, bona fide star.
Yeah,
because that's obviously Roman Anthony's ceiling, right? Like if if somebody like a Juan Soto was locked up long term, yes, I would trade Roman Anthony for a guy like Juan Soto. I would trade Roman, if we're talking about like Bryce Harper when he was 23 or 24. Yes, Roman Anthony's part of that conversation. Like that's the quality of player that I'm talking about if you want to move Roman Anthony. If it's like, oh yeah, like we have Logan Gilbert, like Roman Anthony's not even fleeting thought about
the
that
conversation. No.
Yeah, like no, like like if it's that Roman Anthony has to be involved, it's like, well, thanks for calling, have a great day, but like it's not even a conversation. Just because I think that the risk is too high with arms. The floor is a lot higher with bats. So if it was, we're going to go in a certain direction with the outfield, and it's like Roman Anthony can get you a Juan Soto, who's a bona fide offensive star who plays good defense and can be your right fielder for the next 12 years. Sure, that's the conversation on a guy like Anthony, but I think that, if you're willing to entertain calls, being willing to entertain calls on Casas is certainly where you have to be.
I would,
yeah, 100%.
I would, like I said, I would trade Casas for Gilbert. I would even maybe give them something a little bit more. I'm not giving them like a teal or something like that in the deal. But Gilbert's obviously very good, but I think so is Casas. So like I think you have to treat Casas for what he is too, and that's a young, cost-controlled, all-star caliber first baseman. Now Gilbert's already obviously more proven, but he also has less control. So it depends on like how exactly they value it. So I think that maybe they have to give up a little bit more, but I'm not giving up like another top 50 prospect with Casas for Logan Gilbert.
Well,
I think that,
but here's the thing: is for a guy like Logan Gilbert, that's what Seattle's going to want. It's going to be Casas and Mayer, Casas and Teal, Casas and your
all right, then look elsewhere.
Or your like. There and that's just because Logan Gilbert is a bona fide young arm with years of control. They're not gonna trade for a first baseman with injury history unless they have something else.
I'll give them. I would consider like outside of the top four, like something like Bleece or maybe Cespedes, like something like that with them.
But if you're Seattle, why would that be your ask? Like if I'm Seattle,
they can ask for whatever they want. Doesn't mean they're going to get that. The reality is for Seattle is their pitching rotation is very good. Their offense sucks. So they need to do something to address that. And I don't think ownership is going to be willing to spend. So the question comes down to is how are you going to improve the team?
You trade Luis Castillo, who's costing you $22 million a year.
All right, well, you're not going to get a ton. Like you're going to get one decent bat that's probably not cost controlled that you're probably going to have to pay. You know what I mean? You're not getting a Tristan Casas for Luis Castillo.
No, but I think you could get like a Jarren Duran for Luis Castillo.
Why would I trade Jarren Duran for Luis Castillo?
Because you don't have pitching and you have an abundance of outfielders. I would trade Jarren Duran for Luis Castillo.
Duran's coming off a top 10 season in the majors.
No, I'm not saying him. I'm talking about like that type of skill set you could get for Luis Castillo.
Yeah, you could get certainly. It's going to be Seattle kind of gauging exactly like they're going to field offers probably on all their pitchers, and they're going to sit there and they're going to break down and say like this is the return we can get for this guy, this is the return we can get for that guy. Do you think Bryce Miller has more or less value than Logan Gilbert?
Less.
Because he technically he's having a really good like first year, but he comes with a lot more control. I think at least two more extra years than Logan Gilbert. So the question is like,
he's also older.
Who? Bryce Miller.
No, Gilbert is older.
Yeah,
Gilbert's 27. Bryce Miller's 25.
There's also going to be the factor of that. Oh my God, what was I going to say? Oh, that Logan Gilbert, like with only 3 years of control, they're going to have to face the fact that, like, okay, like Bryce Miller has 5 years. We're a team that doesn't want to spend a lot of money. How are we going to value those two guys a little bit differently? So when you're trading away Gilbert, teams are going to look at obviously the contract, but it's also the fact that Gilbert splits away from Seattle he's still a good pitcher. They're notably worse. I looked at it the other day. I think he's got like a 3.2 ERA at home. He's got a 3.75 ERA outside of Seattle. So is that a monumental difference? No, but I don't think teams see him as a clear-cut ace. I think they see him as like a low-end ace, maybe a high-end number 2 guy that will give you mid-3 ERA pretty consistently. So I'm a little bit worried about those splits, obviously, because he would not be pitching in Seattle. But I think the ask is probably not a ton more than Casas. I think Casas in like one other solid piece would get you Logan Gilbert. That's not Marcel Mayer or Kyle Teal or something like that.
I disagree. I
don't care what you say.
I think you drastically undervalue the fact that Logan Gilbert has 3 more years of control and is a legit.
Casas has 5 more years of control.
I understand that, but pitching is a premium in baseball. You don't trade young pitching without getting elite returns for young pitching. Tristan Casas and a Miguel Bleis is not an elite return for a 27-year-old ace by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not. I think that, and if you look at a team like Seattle that doesn't want to spend, why on earth would they trade away a pitcher that's costing them $4 million a year who can't negotiate a contract when you can trade away a 30?
He's going to start costing a lot more than that in the next 2 years, 3 years.
He will not make in arbitration more money than Luis Castillo makes right now.
No, but next year will be $5 million. The year after that will be like 12 to 15, and the year after that will be like 20 something.
Right. Which I understand that.
Then he's going to want a 10-year contract.
Well, he's not going to get a 10-year deal at 30. But you look at but like for an organization that doesn't spend, if anybody gets traded from Seattle, it's going to be Luis Castillo. I'd be severely shocked if Miller, Wu, Kirby, or Logan Gilbert got moved in the offseason, unless they got elite high-end return for one of those guys.
I think that teams are going to, Castillo is probably the most likely to be traded. Absolutely.
I just think that Seattle's going to want too much for one of those 4 guys that they're more than happy to take a lesser bat in return to get rid of Luis Castillo's $22 million annual salary.
Well, again, it's going to be whatever. It's going to be them balancing it all out. It's okay. Do we want to trade Castillo for a B-level bat? And by level, I mean like combined talent with like contract and age and all that, like B-level return. Or do we want to trade Logan Gilbert and get an A- level return? You know what I mean? So it's going to be, that's really what's going to come.
Seattle's not going to take it, but Seattle wouldn't take an A- return. You don't take less value just because it's the best offer.
Well, by A- return, Gilbert's not an A+ player.
Yeah, I disagree with you there. To me, he is a bona fide number 1.
The numbers just he's a mid-3 guy, which is good. Like he's durable, which is good. Like I'm not trying to say he's anything other than a really good pitcher. Like I said, the splits worry me a little bit with Gilbert. Like if he's a guy that's outside of Seattle, a 3.7 pitcher, like is that good? Yes. Is it an ace? No. So,
question for you: is Max Fried considered an ace in your opinion?
I don't know. Maybe he's been injured. He's been injured over the years.
Max Fried is a mid-3 ERA pitcher. And for the record, that's top 20 in baseball.
I would put that's the thing. like 3-4 and 3-7, 3-8 are like just very different tiers of pitchers, in my
Like,
opinion.
who's more of a number one, Kirby or Gilbert?
I mean, I think Gilbert is better. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
for
Kirby
Gilbert.
is better, but Gilbert has been better this year, especially.
So George Kirby's a 3.6 ERA. What I'm saying though is that
Oh, your
mid
Kirby's
that
up
like
to a 3.6 this year.
yeah.
Last time I looked, he must have had a good last few weeks.
So,
Because
but my point is though is that like now is ERAs aren't what they used to. Like elite ERA
oh
10
yeah,
years. So I think that it's hard to look at it and say like somebody who pitches to a mid to like that second third of the 3 earned run ERA is not a number one. When in reality is that like that's a fringe number one starter in modern day baseball.
again, I'm not. I wouldn't call Gilbert a bona fide ace. I would call him a low end number one, which is good, like very good, like very very good. Obviously, you'll take that any day. It's better than any pitcher the Red Sox have right now. I'm just not treating Logan Gilbert like he's the bona fide ace because I don't think he's a bona fide ace.
So
I
Logan
think
Gilbert, since he became a full-time starter, has not thrown fewer than 32 starts,
the
fewer than
durability is
180,
what
fewer than
makes him really
185
impressive.
innings, and he's averaging for his career, he's over a strikeout per inning with a
That
with a, with a
speaking of
one
that,
with a 107 WHIP and elite walk numbers. That's as close to a bona fide ace as you're ever going to find in this day and age.
he's close to it. I'm not trying to say that he's like if someone wants to call him an ace, I'm not like you're an idiot type of like approach. It just, in my opinion, it's in part because of the splits, and I know that Seattle is the most uh pitcher friendly ballpark out there. Like
True. Yeah.
I need to see it. I need to see it. I look at his splits. Like the splits are worse outside of Fenway. So I mean outside of Seattle. So I'm looking at it, and I think most teams are going to look at it that way, where they say, okay, like yeah, this guy's a 3.2 ERA. That's like an ace quality pitcher
Yeah.
at home in Seattle.
Yeah, he's a 3.8 away from Seattle this year.
Yeah. Or like, is he going to come to my team? Am I going to give up the haul for an ace, and he's going to pitch like a low end one, high end two, in like you know what I mean, like a high three type of guy. So like that's where I think we kind of a little bit differ on that, and I think just his value as a whole will be a touch lower than what you're predicting. But again, like I'm not saying like you're an idiot for thinking.
Right. No,
Well,
and
actually, you know what? I am. You're an idiot. No.
cut it. Ben is an idiot for thinking that Logan Gilbert is a bona fide ace. No, and like just to kind of bring this back to like my overall point is when you look when you're a team that has a controllable asset, right? Think about like the marketing of that player. You're not going to sell to that. It, David DePerry is on the sauce with that statement. No, just kidding. Um, when you're a team, when you're marketing something, like you are selling teams on. Oh, wow, we got some good ones coming in tonight.
Hot takes in here.
It's a Tuesday in Boston. People are getting after it this week.
All right.
I think that when you're marketing, I wouldn't trade that for Scooble. Um, but I think when you're a team and you're selling an asset, right? You're like the fast food restaurant that's selling like the picture of the perfect burger on a menu. When in reality, you get this thing when you unwrap it, it's not anything like it. Now, I'm not trying to compare Logan Gilbert to a McDouble, but you're selling
That's
him
exactly how I heard it.
to team, but like you're selling him to teams on the fact that he's a bona fide ace. He's never hurt. He's in his prime, which is it's not like he's young. Now, granted, there's some risk with pitching, right? You know, Jacob DeGrom has had 2 Tommy Johns. It feels like Tommy John is a rite of passage nowadays. But like you're going to sell Logan Gilbert as a guy that is going to anchor the top of your rotation for years to come, and that they want premium return for that. because that's what they view Logan Gilbert as. And that's what he's proven for the last 3 years that he's been a full-time starter. I just think that big picture, when you look at what Seattle's probably going to do, they're probably not going to take any phone calls on any pitcher not named Luis Castillo.
Oh, see, I think they'll. I think they. First of all, they would be an idiot if they don't. Like you got to feel. This reminds me of like the conversations on May and like if the Pats were always listen to offers. Feel free, call, make me offers. Like doesn't mean I'm gonna like do deals. They need to and they should, and I think they will listen on all their pitchers. And they need to gauge the return because the reality is this: is I think that they could trade Logan Gilbert tomorrow, add to the lineup, and their rotation will still be good. That's not to take a lot away from Gilbert. It's to say how strong their rotation is. When you consider Castillo, Kirby, Miller, and Wu, you'd still have 4 very good pitchers. Woo, yeah. So I think that they'll consider it all because they need series help with their lineup, and obviously adding a guy like Tristan Casas would instantly be an anchor in the center of their lineup.
And if the Red Sox could acquire Brian Wu, as we all know, the strikeout noise at Fenway is woo. I think that would just be fantastic. Anytime Brian Wu pitched and got it, it would just be woos all around. All right, so lock it in. Call John Henry. Call Craig Brazzo. Trade for Brian Wu. The marketing of that name on the strikeout sells itself.
All right, that's the only reason why the Sox will pay a surplus just to get him here.
Just because of the strikeout news.
Yeah, they love marketing.
All right. Let's wrap this up, though. I do want to finish with state your takes. I hope you boys have yours ready. Who wants to start us off?
So
you can go, Ben.
Mine. You're putting me on the spot because full disclosure, was not prepared for this. I will say. Let's see. I'll go with the. I will go with the Red Sox and say that Jarren Duran will be traded this offseason. It's just kind of on the forefront of my mind. I think that with a surplus of outfielders, just like Seattle has a surplus of pitching, they'll figure out a way to capitalize on Jarren Duran's career best season in his albeit short MLB career. But I don't think that Jarren, I don't know, maybe I'll eat my words. I don't know as if Jarren Duran can be better than he is right now. I think that what you see this year is kind of what you would get on an annual basis when he's at his ceiling. And knowing that they probably will not spend, unfortunately, because I think Corbin Burns would absolutely feast on the American League East pitching at Fenway. That their best move is to trade somebody like Jarren Duran to acquire cost-controlled pitching and kind of stick to the philosophy that they've stuck with, even if I disagree with it.
Fair enough. Zach, you got yours? You want me to go?
I got mine. I was looking up and making sure that I actually could make this into one. I'll go with the Bruins as we're gearing up for their season to start in a couple weeks. I think my particular take is that Pasta will lead the NHL in goals this year. I think finally has not finally, but he once again has a true number one center with him. I think last couple of years, he obviously was really good, but I think him and Elias Lindholm, from everything that I'm reading, is the projected lines with he'll be paired up with the Elias Lindholm. I think that'll be a very good pairing. I think it'll be a very successful pairing. And I state my take that Pasta will lead the NHL in goals for this upcoming year.
All right, I think we're all hoping that is true.
And hopefully he does not lead the NHL in neutral zone turnovers.
I can't predict that, but he still might.
For myself, I kind of went back and forth on this. I'm gonna go like incredibly bold.
Hold on to your pants.
Incredible. So not only will Drake May start week 5,
Oh,
Oh boy.
but
hold on to your pants.
Drake May will lead all rookies in passing touchdowns by the end of the year.
Wow. Well, he is. Is he
He's
still
not that
tied?
far behind.
He's second right now, I think.
I was
yeah.
gonna say, is he still tied?
Like,
Was he
no,
still tied?
I think Caleb threw 2. I
Oh,
think
and
Bo
Jaden
Nix
Daniels
threw
had some.
Oh,
Bo
Jaden
Nix-
Daniels did,
No,
yeah.
Bo Nix
Bo
did
Nix-
not throw. No, he
So-
may have run for one, but he hasn't thrown a touchdown yet.
So at the end of this coming week, he could be, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 behind, depending on what happens with Daniels and Caleb Williams this coming week. So that will be my state your take is May will start week 5 and lead rookies in passing touchdowns by the end of the year. And if we can tack on it, he will not win. A QB will not win offensive rookie of the year either. That is also my prediction.
So Jaden Daniels has 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he threw 2 last night.
Caleb Williams threw 2 as well.
Caleb Williams also has 2, and then Tyrod Taylor has a touchdown pass this season. Did not know he was still around.
Yeah, he came in. He's in the Jets. Is he with the Jets?
Nice to know that he is still alive.
Is that where he is? He's with the Jets.
Is he backing up Aaron Rodgers? Shout out Keegan and Peele.
I don't know.
He is the Jets backup. That is correct.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it's definitely bold, and he might not even start next week, and it'll be basically done already. But yeah, I do think that the pressure will be a little bit on Mayo to make the decision. I think week 5 is a good spot for him to start, and I don't expect him to just come in and ball out, but I think that he's gonna leave. He's gonna lead the league, lead rookie QBs.
He's gonna lead the league in
Lead the
touchdowns.
league
Oh boy!
If he leads the league,
that's the real state your take right there.
Yeah. All right. That's gonna do it for this week. The Patriots, like we said, play San Francisco this coming week. None of us are super optimistic. Ben, what's your score prediction so I can go bet on it?
49ers 23, Patriots 10.
23-10. All right. You started with 49ers, and I thought you were saying 49 to something like that. And I was like, oh, shit.
No.
I was like, we're going to get our ass kicked. No, 23-10. All right. I'll throw another couple bucks on it.
I was going to say 23-6.
23-6.
I think.
All right. I'm going to go 23-7 then.
I was going to say, with Hargrave not in the middle of that defensive line, perhaps Ramondre finds the end zone.
That's fair.
Fair enough.
Because Brissett's not going to throw one.
Until next week, go Pats. Celtics start soon. Bruins start soon. I think the first Bruins preseason game is tonight or tomorrow?
It was Sunday. They lost 3-2 to the Rangers on Sunday.
What I thought
there's one more tonight. I saw. I got an update for it.
Okay, yeah. All right, yeah. Until next week, we'll raise the banner. Thanks for listening.
Have a good night.
Go Pats. Go Boston Sports. Yeah. Goodbye.